I'm a member of CPAC from Mecklenburg County, and I'm a mother of a child with autism and IDD. And I think this is the one problem that we all have a common thread. We all have something in common, whether it's a parent, a loved one, or whether it's a provider that's dedicated their profession and their life to working with people with disabilities. I'm here to introduce Dave Richard. He's dedicated most of his life to working with people with disabilities through art. He says he was 15 years old. He's done this most of his entire life, and he's given up all of that career to actually help people to have a voice that otherwise would not have one, people that would otherwise be invisible and not be seen or heard. And at that point, looking out into the audience, and I see a room full of people with this common thread, I'd like to take the time now to introduce Dave Richard from the Department of Health and Human Services. He's the Deputy Secretary of Behavioral Health, IDD, Mental Health, and Substance Abuse, and I got it all right.
We really don't want to make it that formal, so again, it's very nice. And we want to thank CPAC, because CPAC helped us pull us together across the state. And so quick thank you to Cardinal for organizing that with CPAC, and Lifespan for hosting us here, so we really appreciate that effort. It's a big space. Probably in the microphone, right? Sorry. I was going to try to get away from it, but we don't do that. Let me tell you a little bit about, let me introduce a couple other people first so you know who's here. One is Jessica Keith, who is the Special Advisor to the Secretary on ADA and Olmsted, and she is responsible for the implementation of our settlement with responsible for our settlement with the Transition Community Living Program. A lot of people call it the DHHS settlement. So Jessica took a trip out to do this. Kathy Nichols, who is the contracts manager for all of the BC waivers across the state at DMA. She's a very important person in terms of making sure that this waiver runs well. And Kathy, I am pretty much Kathy. So she's Kathy. Kathy is just waving in. Yes. What's a bit of target? So Kathy's there. So Kathy is going to be helpful writing things. She also is a technical expert too, so she can help us with the questions that we have. There are several other DHHS staff, and I don't want to miss anybody. So what I'll do is just raise your hand, show your way out here, and I also want to introduce Andrea Meisner, who is, I'm not sure what your title is anymore.
I'm the Director of Regulatory Affairs.
Director of Regulatory Affairs with Cardinal Innovations. And there are also several other Cardinal staff here.
You guys are Allison Crotty is the Director of Consumer Affairs.
I did it to mark the cord.
And so we appreciate you guys. I don't know if
Sorry.
Well, let me actually, Judy said that I want to say one is that the LMNCO staff don't have to be here. They chose to be here. It's not something that was required by anybody, and I think it's important to know that. And other than Kathy and I, nobody else from the department chose to come. Kathy would have done something somebody else. So the reason why I say that is it's really important to know is that people can get about what's actually happening and want to hear what people have to say. So let's start off with that. The other thing I want to say is that it is a listening session, but because I'm now doing state bureaucrat, we get to talk a little bit first, so I'm going to do that. And the other part about listening, I think is really important. We've seen this across other events that we've had. This is our fifth one. It really is helpful if you're honest. If people are cordial to one another, not that you can't be passionate about what you believe, if people are, and I'll say that, but everybody here is here for the same reason. We're trying to improve our system. We're trying to make sure that what we do in our system is the right thing for North Carolina. And so if you can do that, that'd be helpful. I say in most of the places, if you want to yell at somebody, yell at me, don't yell at the rest of them, because you're not signed up for that kid, so that's okay. The other folks are really doing a great job in the state of North Carolina and for Cardinal, trying to make sure we implement the system. The other part of it that you should know is that we're going to record, write down a lot of things, and some of them will write on a piece of paper. You will see that again. It will be posted on our website. You'll see themes. You might not see everything we write because there's a lot of stuff. We're going to pick the themes, make sure they're out there, you'll see what you said, and we'll repeat it back to you. And this is not your last shot to have comments. Make sure you have our email addresses, our phone numbers, other ways to get in contact so you can, and that there are several other points in which we'll have a chance to talk more about the development of the system. And that's what we're here to talk about. So let me tell you a little bit about what we want to listen for and a little bit about what we think are some of the key issues that we've heard and we want to raise with you. Secretary Bosch, who is my boss, said back several months, we clearly have to have a continued vision around intellectual development. We have to make sure we make a significant commitment to that going forward. And one of the ways that we all agreed that was the most important way to do that was to spend some time listening to what people across the state have to say about our system. What works, what doesn't work, what you'd like to see, what are your dreams, aspirations, what should we do going forward, what are the things that make sense to you, things that don't make sense. Just about anything is on the target, right? So we want to hear that. We want to know what's going on. Because if we're going to make good decisions going forward, the best way to do that is know what people that either are providers, or family members, or people with disabilities, or other stakeholders in our community want to know and want to see their assistance. So that's really important to us as we go forward. Our intention is to take what you said, roll it into our vision and plan, the things that we can do. There will be some things we can't do. And our commitment to you is to tell you what those are and why. And be honest. So we don't want to have a situation where you tell us a bunch of stuff and we say, oh, Ron, that's great, and we'll want to do it, and then go back and can't. We may not be able to say that tonight. We might have to say, in many cases, well, we didn't think about that, because that's something we haven't heard or something that makes some sense. But what I commitment to you is that we'll be honest with you. We'll tell you what we can and can't do. We'll try to tell you why and make as much sense as possible. And then continue to have dialogue as we go forward. This is not a meeting just about the innovations waiver. We'll be clear about that. We'll talk a lot about the innovations waiver because it is an important, one of the most important parts of our system. But nothing's off limits. So you know in our developmental disability system, there are several other ways that we support people. We support people through the ICF program. And I'm trying to not use as many acronyms. The ICF is the Community Care Facility Program. And that funds our state community centers, plus a lot of community-based ICF group homes around North Carolina. We also fund services through pure state money, state-appropriated funds. Many people describe it as IPRS. We're trying to get away from that word, but those acronyms with pure state funding. We spend about $120 million in North Carolina on developmental disabilities with state-appropriated funds. We also have county funds. Mecklenburg County, as you know, is a county that has put a lot of money into providing services for people with intellectual development disabilities. And so that's part of the system also. We also use another Medicaid service, now we're going to get a little geeky on it, called B3, which is a way of using savings in a waiver to fund other development disability services. And frankly, there may be other ways that you want to talk about the system. So none of those things are off limits. But we know a lot of people want to talk about the innovations waiver, and we have a sort of deadline that we're working on. Our intention is to submit amendments to our current innovations waiver in the spring of 2015 for an implementation date. I like to say December 31st, 2015, but we know it'll be January 1st, 2016. It sounds, when you say 16, it sounds like a long way away. It's not. It's very close, and in particular, we have to go through so many of the regulatory things that we have to with our federal partners, CMS, and frankly, through our state system to get that done. It will take time. So we are particularly interested about things that people have to say about the innovations waiver, but we're clear that this meeting is about anything we want to talk about around the IDD system. It is, we will respect what you want to say, and I will try not to interrupt or slow down, but I do reserve the right, if we're going too long, to ask you just to speed it up or slow down or whatever the right answer is, so we can get to other people. And we can't discuss individual circumstances in a public forum. So if you have something that's very individual that you want to talk about, you can grab us on the side and do that, but we can't do that in a public forum, and we'll be able to engage that. So we'd ask you to try to avoid those things. And if you want to ask questions about Medicaid expansion, so to start with, one of the things that we'd like to do is tell you a little bit about what our vision is and some of the things that we're seeing across the state and overall. We believe, and our vision is that our system should support people with intellectual and developmental disabilities in their communities to live the most productive lives that they can. That's really a fundamental value that we think is our system should be built upon. We can say it a lot more flowery language, we can put all sorts of visions up on, but frankly, that's what this is about, how to support people who have intellectual and developmental disabilities. And we want to make sure that we do that in the most effective way. We believe that our system has to be accountable. It has to be accountable to the taxpayers, it has to be accountable to you, it has to be accountable to all other stakeholders, and it has to be equitable. We have to create a system that works for everybody, not a system that works for a few, because that's the value that we have in North Carolina. We have a lot of good things that go on in our system. I talk to people every day who have sons and daughters on the innovations waiver. They're thrilled. There's great things there. I talk to people who have sons and daughters in ICF programs. They think it's the best thing that's ever happened. And frankly, talk to people who have very little state funding supports, but think that what's going on for their sons and daughters and themselves individually are really terrific. But we know we're not there. There are a lot of things we can do better. And we all want to improve our system as we go forward. A couple of things we know and believe is that our system needs to be a support-based system. That people with intellectual and developmental disabilities do not need a system that is a recovery or a rehab system. They need a system that supports people. It should be based on self-determination principles. I think that is really important. And for those of you that haven't kept up with that, that's really about freedom, and authority, and support, and responsibility, which is one of those key things we always forget when we talk about self-determination. Responsibility for wise use of resources and making sure that we are responsible to everybody in our communities. We think and we believe that people should have access to and be supported as much as possible with generic resources, generic supports. But we also understand that natural supports don't come about for people with significant disabilities that easily. It has to be intentional. And we have to make sure that the work that we do intentionally finds ways to support people through those natural generic supports. We hear a lot of things. We've heard a lot of things over the past 4 listening sessions that we've done. And there are things that you probably will want to talk more about tonight. We say that, we hear people say that. Often it feels like people expect my son and daughter to get better more. And that is based on the recovery system. And that although we all know people can do better in their communities, we do a really good job at supporting that, that we must recognize that long-term support is what people need, and that's what we're providing in the development of the system. People tell us that the system is overly complex, that the regulatory environment that we have established is one that sort of, if you're a provider, it's hard to believe you can get through it. If you're a family member, I don't know how you understand it, and certainly from our standpoint, it's awfully difficult to manage because we've gotten so top-heavy in regulatory environment. We hear from people often that although we claim that person-centeredness is a value, that our system really doesn't value person-centeredness. And that we've got to change the way we think about that and really be good about person-centeredness. We do hear a lot about the inequity of our system. You often either have a lot, and you've gotten that, or you have nothing. And that's not fair. We know there are way too many people on our waiting list, and we have to do something about it. And we have to do something about it that people can trust and go forward. We understand our system is inefficient. That the way we work often is too complex, that creates barriers for efficient services, and we need to do something more about that. What we do believe, and I think these are really important for the values that we have that go beyond that support, we believe that we have to do something about those things. We believe that we have to have a system that creates predictability for the General Assembly, for you as people with disabilities and families who use this system, for providers, for our LME MCOs, and certainly for the state and the General Assembly who has to fund this. We think that going to a system, and it's not just in innovations, but we'll start there, a system that creates individual budgets, which are based upon individual needs, that are consistent, is the right way to go. It is the original self-determination model. It's the one that we think makes most sense, and we know it's complex. We also know that in any system we create, any system we operate, we believe this, there has to be a fair and equitable process by which we determine those budgets, and there has to be the ability for people to have reconsideration if they don't think that the budgets are fair. And we believe that, and we want to make sure that we do that. We also know that sometimes in our system for people with intellectual development disabilities, we don't allow room for crisis. And we don't have a support mechanism in place for that. So we have to recognize that that's a possibility. We want to support families, because we know that families are critical, regardless of whether a family member has chosen to be a paid provider or a family member is not a paid provider. We want to do a system that supports families because it's an important component of what we believe. We want to encourage the use of innovation, and that in particular around technology. There's some incredible things that are happening across our state, across the country, and using of enabling technology. And frankly, sometimes our waiver and other systems are barriers to allow that to happen. So we need to make a change there. And we want to build on what works. We don't want to tear down what we've had and start all over again. We recognize that our system has gone through a lot of changes and continues to go through those changes. We want to make sure that whatever we do in the future builds on what works. So, in general, we want to make sure that the system we have is effective. And that's really what it comes down to, effective. We recognize we have a lot of challenges to get there. But I can tell you, we sat down originally with our LME partners and tried to lay out a vision collectively, and there wasn't a soul in the room that disagreed that we need to make this kind of direction the right direction for people with intellectual development skills. And each one of our listening sessions so far, what we've heard from people is the vision makes sense. Here are some more things you ought to think about as you get in there, and maybe you're wrong with some of the things you said, right? Maybe we need to think differently about those. And that's what we want to do. So tonight, what we're asking you to do is to just tell us what you think. Again, I'll call on you, and if there is a response needed from us, we'd like to have a dialogue. If there's not, we'll write it down and think about it. If Kathy or Jessica or somebody else needs to jump in, we'll ask them to jump in technically if there's questions. Again, we ask you to respect your neighbors, respect the other people here. Let's do this in a really sort of nice way, so that we get through, and at the end of the day, well done. Our commitment to you is that we'll listen, we'll hear what you have to say, we'll record what you said, we'll feed it back to you at the end, and a lot of things that we've heard, and we will take everything you say. We will also commit to you that there will be some things you want to do, we can't do. And there will be things you want to do, you can't do. And we'll tell you what they are, we'll tell you why, and we'll continue to do this. Ask what the innovations were. And I'll tell you this part of it. And lots of other shots to talk to us. But we'll take what you have. We have a stakeholder group that is made up of association representatives and representatives from CPACs. And CPAC felt that was the best way to get family and consumer involved in the process. A relatively small group that's going to be on a regular basis. So what we want to do is take what you say back, not to draft stuff, and have another group that is not us taking a look at it and tell us what they think. You'll be able to access what they're saying on the website, so you can see that. And then when we have to go in the back room, and when Kathy has to write the waiver, Kathy will write, somebody else. Kathy will help do this. When we write the waiver changes we want to submit to CMS, we will have to post those for your comment. And so we have another shot at doing it. So again, we'll tell you what we're going to do. We'll try to, in every shape and form, be transparent. We will screw something up, I'll tell you that. Sometimes we'll say we're going to post something, we won't do it the right day, we'll do it another day. Call us on it, we'll get it to you so you can see it. And we will keep doing those things, but at some point in time, we'll have to write something. And we'll have to put it down, and that'll be in the late spring probably. We'll get it out, and we'll have another shot. So that's our commitment, that's what we want to do. Any other?
Good job, Chief.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and start, so just raise your hand and we'll start. I'm not going to start on the road, we're going to go way to the back.
Okay, I'm going to freeze mine because I get nervous speaking in public. I'm a parent of a 25-year-old young man with moderate to severe disabilities. He receives services through Innovations. He's been on a waiting list for 3 years for a spot in a UMARC group home. I've been told by my caseworker, Cardinal, that no additional beds are being approved at group homes at present. And at the same time, I'm reading in the paper that you're closing some of the larger group homes because they exceed the approved number of residents. What that is sounding like to me is a reduction, or certainly not an increase, in the number of group home beds. And I should also, just for full disclosure, say I'm on the board of trustees for UMARC, at the same time on the waiting list. So.
No problem. Let me tell you, let me explain to you exactly what's happening, and I think what you read about is Bell House. And it's really important because it is relatively complex what's going on. First thing to know is that the Department of Health and Human Services is not closing Bell House. Neither is Carnal, neither is Sand Hills, no LMEMCO, nobody has gone to Bell House and said close. So, first thing. Second thing is that there are a set of circumstances that the board of directors of Bell House have had to face that are based upon, frankly, federal changes. And we have to be real clear about that because I think sometimes, DHHS, we get hammered a lot. So sometimes we get a little sensitive when it's looked at us. It's really mostly federal changes. And so the circumstance that happened with Bell House is essentially what it is. Bell House is a 22-person, not a group home facility. They're listed as an adult care facility. That's how they're licensed. They were a HUD facility, so they have HUD subsidies that are site-based subsidies. So that's a very important distinction that goes on there. And over the years, they had received originally state money and county money, I believe, in Guilford County to run the program. Most of the people with pretty significant physical disabilities and some intellectual disabilities also. 2 years ago, when the state had to submit another waiver change, essentially we were told by CMS that they no longer wanted to have any innovations waiver, and at the time CAP waiver slots, being used in large facilities or adult care homes. There were about 50 people in North Carolina that had that happen. And I probably should take one more step back. In our technology stuff, our home community-based waiver that we call Innovations now is exactly what it says. It's a waiver. It's a waiver of a higher level of care, institutional level of care, ICF. And so the feds, in some ways rightfully, I'd say, I'm not sure I like the way they handled it, but rightfully say, if you're going to waive institutional care, you should not use those waiver slots in an institution.
Fine, but that said, beds in the smaller units, what's the forecast?
So let me finish the Bell House story. I'm sorry I'm running, but it's really important to me to do this, so if you don't mind. Sorry. So anyway, and I'll go faster, is that 2 years ago, when that happened, we sent the then Secretary Aldalia, sent the letter to anybody that was affected by this, saying that we will provide you with state funding, but cannot guarantee that beyond 1 year, unless you move. If you move, you can take your waiver slot with you. The problem was that when that was done, it was money that was not recurring, that was used to do that work. When Secretary Bosch came in, it was right at the time that I was coming into the department, she recognized that there were many people that had not moved and had still lived there and thought that money was going to continue. So she directed us to continue to fund those programs for another year with a sort of reduction over a period of time that money, but be really clear that this will end. We were very clear with Bell House, they understood it, and they recognized they were hoping they could find other monies, but they could not do that. So that's the deal with Bell House. The DHHS is not closing Bell House. Now, what doesn't change is the ability for people to use innovations waiver slots to be supported in other residential settings. And right now, the team that comprised of DMA, DMH, all the divisions within Health and Human Services, and our LMCO partners, and HUD, are working to help find appropriate places for individuals to live. There is no moratorium on additional group home beds. The only moratorium is that we can't use innovations waiver slots in group home beds above 3 people at this point in time. Now, one of the things that you might want to tell us in this meeting is that maybe you ought to think that differently, right? You can, and that would be a fair thing to say. But there is no moratorium on additional group home beds, and there's no moratorium, frankly, on additional group home beds that are larger. It's just that you can't use these innovation waiver slots in them. And that is really the direction that the federal government is going and telling us to go. So it is not necessarily a North Carolina thing, but that is a federal thing that we're moving forward.
So if I understand you, if there were a 6-person home, the maximum number of beds that could be occupied by people with innovations is 3?
That is not, no, right now, there are a lot of 6-bedroom homes that are grandfathered in.
Right, but
that
in
you're
the
allowed to
future,
use, but no new 6-bedroom
Right.
homes, but you have a
more than
innovation
3.
slot. 3-bedroom, yes, but no 6-bedrooms that you do that. Yes, ma'am. And then you.
I was 1911, so I'm thinking ahead but not far. I know that I would ask you guys to do in your vision planning is to look at other states and see what they're doing. I know West Virginia has moved to individual apartments with staff coming in for care, and I think that's maybe the direction that people are moving into. So, a bigger issue that just came to my knowledge today, and this has to do with providers, and with like the Easter Seals and other organizations. But Easter Seals have just made a decision to not allow their staff to work more than 25 hours a week. Coming down from the federal government, from healthcare reform, but that really affects us when we have staff that we trust and love, and it's really hard to keep staff, and that's another issue here is, staff turnover. When you find folks that can work 30 hours, not even working full time, but they're working a little more than 25, and now we're being told that, that's really tough.
So just, we're going to write that down in response to one of the things that we know, and it's hard to account for. The goal is that when the Affordable Care Act employer mandate comes due in January 1st, there are an awful lot of individuals who direct support work that don't get the full health benefits of the agency. If they're working on 30 hours, they'll be required to get those benefits, which then radically changes the cost for that position, which I'm not so sure that we have in North Carolina, and I don't know how we can, I'm not sure any other state has accounted for that inside of a rate structure going forward, but that's what that issue is. But we're really, absolutely.
And I'm just add training also for staff. Again, how you're working with those providers, and I think not all providers are equal, and so that
Thank you. Okay. Are you gonna leave?
Well, I just speak personally. I live in Virginia, so it's a long haul, you know. I already said my piece to him last week, so he knows what my concerns are about the system and my son. What's come about is my son is 31 years old. He lives in a self-direction model, independent, in his own home. And he's had an innovation rating since it started, and it's been good till they cut his hours. So in the process of getting your hours cut, we filed a reconsideration review form, and it tells you all the little guidelines of what you're supposed to do. At the very top of it, it says mail, fax, email, or hand delivery, signed print. Well, if you're an independent self-advocate, you know you don't have transportation, you're not an SW. You also, you'd like to email if you had the opportunity to get to a computer, but when you get down to the actual form, the bottom of it left out email. Self-advocates need to be told everything the way it's going to go. You need to put it in the form the way they can understand. So this thing says that you file this, and your hearing your state hearing will be later, that you file the reconsideration. And I said, file reconsideration, and he was denied. When he was denied, he had asked for an ADA reasonable accommodation to email him. That's how he understands things. It comes in the email, he can break it down, he can run it through his computer, he'll tell him what he needs to know, or he has somebody that will assist him with it. Well, it took an act of Congress to get that done, just with most. And after we got that done, and they had denied the expedited version, and I won't say what they said their excuse for it. We found out that there's actually a statute that tells you how this is done. And in the statute, the last words say, expedited review requests made by network providers on behalf of enrollees, the LME NCO shall presume an expedited appeal is necessary. Well, we did that because it doesn't say and or, it just says that you can have your provider. Well, that was turned down, and you're legally supposed to send that in writing, and we got a voicemail, which we need. So you need to know your rights, and in this form, it should tell you, and it does. It should tell you everything you need to know. The other complaint I have along with this is the fact that you don't use the timelines overlap, which is my son's services have to be approved, so will take place October 1st. So if I'm in a 45-day time frame, it's going to throw it into October. By the time you get through your OAH hearing, you're going to be in November, if you belong. So in the timeline, you're going to be out of the timeline that you can actually go Medicaid. Because if the judge gets to be in November, you can't go back and go October because it's already passed. So you need to go to statute, you need to use self-advocate language and all this stuff. There's just not enough of it there. You need to use timelines for work. Partners actually did training on this. My son's QD, and their PowerPoint, and their conversation with it, none of it stated in the statute or that the provider can do the reconsideration. So let's see, what else
You don't have to get anything else.
Okay, you also need to know that parents and self-advocates don't like labels in disability. We don't like labels either, like client, enrollee, patient, consumer, beneficiary, participant, recipient. How do you ever know what you are when you're called so many different things? Why don't you just come up with one name? Stick with it. Great care support. The lady who said something about that. Holly really knows that the College of Direct Support was put out, and I can tell you as a parent that I have never seen anybody, or heard of anybody that's ever been through the College of Direct Support. So it sounds like a great thing, but was it just a project, or does it really exist? Because people need training. My son's in a self-direction model, and he and I train his staff, but for those that he had before he got self-direction, the training process varies from group to group, from Easter Seal to whoever the ARC is to whoever anybody else is. And it's just not consistent. It needs to be. I'm glad to hear that at the last meeting I attended with him, that the state's going to start using common sense. That would be a big plus. Because I'm sure that if you could figure out how to work with parents, you could actually figure out how to save money. And I'd start with the NCOs and LMEs and hire half that upper staff because they can conversion and get training for families. It needs to be in self-advocate language, and we need to train self-advocates, and we need to train families. people there from the MCOs, because they can't do a PowerPoint presentation on this statute, the QPs, are in bad shape. And I would not keep going over.
Okay. I want to, in terms of, make sure I respect, part of what we have to do is convert this into, work with these recommended laws in Florida. But I think what we heard clearly is that we need to have absolute good communication, so everybody knows what the rules are, and in language that everybody can understand, and that we need to make accommodation, especially for people, clearly for people with disabilities, to make sure they have access to those things going forward, and there has to be some sort of a reconciliation or appeal process that is fair. That'd be
The thing with the reconsideration and the denial, them coming in now, they actually came, the denial of the reconsideration before the denial of the service.
those are very helpful in your experience.
And they also didn't use certified mail. They can't use certified mail anymore. It's delivered by UPS. Click on board. Thank you.
We're going way over. That's you, not that wall.
Well, number one, I have a situation with Kel's office. You not only have the Bell House, you have the Regional Living Center, you have the Mega House, you have the Arbor House, and every one of them has a death, and DSS, DHHS. DSS has nothing to do, we're not called in, the SBI, nobody investigates what the state profits off of the fines of what these people do. My dad just died in a nursing home, and the state DMA on the son held in the county this week. It was in a youth shelter for an employee assaulting him, that my ex-husband. There's no legal guardianship. You see, this starts in your courts with the clerks of court giving DSLs guardianships, and guardianship says you can't talk to nobody. They don't have a right declaration of resident right. NCGS 131B-20 don't mean nothing to nobody. I know, I just talked to an idiot down in Randolph County, the third place in the drug hunt, and that my son was assaulted last night, middle of the night, we get a call from the sheriff. And that my son was absurd the one for slugging the employee. Praise God Almighty. But I'm going to tell you, I am the next door neighbor by my mother in Greensboro Country Club, the Dr. Boss. And she has not, and you haven't, I have emailed every one of your people, even with Carol Steckle and all the crap before Purdue left and used Easter cells, and Connie Cochran says, we don't have nothing to do with your son. Well, my son is an incompetent, wasn't medically assessed, and a Social Security judge September 9th nailed the heck fire out of the case that he doesn't have disability. How about you understand acting like from the federal settlement that DHHS under Alabama violating Social Security law, and it's the same thing she's talking about the disability hearings. And you had 3 big federal cases. And by the Homestead Act, doesn't the state understand where to be integrated back into their homes, not in little LMEs? Oh, Sandhill's got closed down Medicaid, Medicare, Florida. Their director's gone 3 weeks ago. See, I'm on top of this, that I have a son held by the state property law funds. And I'm going to bring up last night where the sheriff's department telling me that an employee slugged him, and my son turned around, and it being in the shelter, and his pedophile father, there ain't a guardianship, and I was told today about here. You need to call his guardian.
I would suggest that they're being really personal and really specific.
Now, I want to question on the Federal Homestead Act with all this, why the state is in violation of a federal order to allow our children, and when you say a rescission rate, oh, they just love being put in these places, mental drugs. Where's your mental assessment to any of these on this Homestead Act, this federal settlement of the injunction filed with all these cases?
I think we'll probably ask that Jessica here does that, and she can,
And assessment
afterward,
judge just nailed y'all.
afterward, probably have a conversation.
Because I want my son to read this.
I promise you I won't be long to test you. Okay. I love Judy. I've known her a long time. In fact,
Can you use the microphone, please?
actually, I was going to ask to do that. I actually advocated for Judy's son to be on the, nominated him to be on the state CFAC 6, 7 years ago. My name is Barbara Richards.
I have an adult son being served by the Innovations Waiver. He's 23, and I have worked for mental health. I was on the state CFAC for 3.5 years. I was on the local mental health client rate for 6 years. So I can tell you that I do know both the old system of CAP, and I'm pretty well versed on the new system of innovation. I know you're trying to get it right. I'm not saying that all of it is failing. But I can say that there's a lot of stuff that's just sliding through, and a lot of it is based on, for lack of a better term, budget management, and not based on what the needs are. There's a number of things that I want clarified, and you're not going to be able to cover them all here, and I'm not even going to try. Fade out of services is one thing. It's not legal. There's nothing formal about it, and there needs to be, because if families and these clients are going to have fade out of services, then they need to know how and when, because ultimately someone has to cover those services. Case management is non-existent. Over the past 2.5 years, it took me 10.5 months to get customized shoes for my son. Medicaid services that are no longer covered, which used to be covered under CAP, mind you. If it wasn't covered under Medicaid, under CAP, it would be worked into their budget, and if they medically needed something, it would get paid for under their budget. It would be worked into their budget. Now, you're just sent a denial. No, you can't have those shoes. No, you can't have those glasses. No, you can't have this. No, you can't have that. But nobody is navigating through the Medicaid system. My son went 10.5 months without shoes, and only because of my perseverance did I get him those shoes. And because I literally strangled the doctor for the 3rd time to write the 3rd prescription to get the braces on the 2nd shoe, because one shoe was covered, the other one wasn't. But a 1.5 years to get medication if it wasn't covered by Medicaid. By insurance coverage. 2 years to get a chair that wasn't covered. And now I've gone self-directed and got it covered. But all of these things, if I hadn't fought and fought and fought, I wouldn't have. Now, if we've got a court-appointed guardian that isn't going to fight and fight and fight, are they going to do without and do without and do without? That's my question. Last of all, most importantly, family members as providers. Here we have cost of turnover in the workforce. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Well, let me just say. Okay, the question is, and this is my last question.
Yeah.
Cost of turnover in the workforce. Has a study been done in this state? Because in many states, across the nation, 64%. Now, if I can't keep someone on the benefit, but I can keep a family member who's emotionally invested in my son's well-being, there you go. You're not going to keep somebody at $725 an hour. Well, I'm trying to make really valid points, and I don't think.
One of the things that we would like to, I just want to say, before we start partnerships, is that there are a lot of people that want to talk about a lot of different things.
Well, I get that.
Trying to make sure that we succinctly take what you said and quickly answer. You did chance.
Okay.
All right. I think what you've been talking about are ones that you're concerned about the families provider issue. That seems to be one that is consistent across the state. We've been hearing that a lot.
More importantly is where Medicaid drops the ball, because Innovations doesn't have a fail-safe for that.
And so, we already said that there are several places where you think that the Medicaid program, because of the way it's designed, does not immediately respond to the needs for it that you would have. The turnover issue, it is a big issue. It's a big issue for all of us. very high cost. We understand it. We know that there are some incredible people out working in our system, the direct support workers, and do a great job across the state. We need to recognize that. We also know that it's a very difficult job with not a lot of pay, so we need to find other ways to make sure we do that.
There's one.
Let's go way back there. Should have said way back there.
First of all, thank you, Ms. Green, for coming to address our concerns. Some people here, Cardinal, might recognize my face, might recognize my name. None of it is going to be good, I'm sure. But anyway, I have a 15-year-old daughter who's diagnosed with autism. She's nonverbal. She is self-abusive. She rips her skin. She bites. She rips her skin. She attacks people. And for many years, she has had an enhanced rate because nobody wants, like this lady said, nobody wants to come and work with her. It's 725. And we have had, so there has been some exceptions for her. Under the circumstances, you need somebody that is going to be coming in that wants to work for a higher rate than 725. And she's had, for the past several different waivers, let's just call it that way, for CAP. Now, when the innovations waiver started, we had a problem with mechanism. But Becky reviewed everything and said this kid really does need to have someone that can come in at a higher rate. With the innovations waiver under Cardinal, unfortunately, one department is they operate as a dictatorship. Because when we presented the same things, nothing has changed with my daughter. If anything, things have gotten worse. They have denied the enhanced rate or the specialized rate. They have their own criteria. How can you have a different criteria for a rate that already existed that was approved for many years? And yet nobody can address the UN department to tell them that you have to have an appeal process. There is no appeal process. They just declare that we have our own rules and we're not going to give you the enhanced rate. How can that be? Because
Answer the question, Dave.
Except now I have staff that's at risk because they used to get paid a certain rate, but they're not getting paid that rate anymore. And they're not going to be able to survive. How do you address something like that?
One is that we're right in there, first of all, we are clearly what you're saying is that there needs to be a process by which you feel like you get your concerns addressed. Right?
Yes.
One thing that, and I think it's important to say this, and that, because we can't address individual issues. That's not the intent.
No, but this will affect other people.
I understand, and that's why we went through that. Part of what I think we have to really be clear about is that one of the reasons why we believe we have to begin to change the way we do our waiver services is that we have to make sure that what we have is sustainable long term. And that's just reality. Is that I've been around for a long time. And one of the things I know about members of the General Assembly, what they really want to know is that if they create a budget, that we can meet those targets. And part of what they want to know is that can they invest in something, if we tell them we need more slots, that they'll know how much that's going to cost them going forward. And that really is one of those key components of what we're trying to figure out as a state. It's how do we create a system which we all understand what the future holds, and how do we make sure that it's predictable, it doesn't change, that it's based upon good data, good information, person-centeredness, and that it's equitable. So again, what you described, I think, is the question about how do we create a budget that is consistent going forward, and how do we have a circumstance in which people don't feel that's adequate, that they have an option for reconsideration.
Can I just add, Mr. Richard, that the rates that they were getting paid before doesn't exceed the $135,000. This is what they were getting paid before. It's just that the UN department arbitrarily creates their own criteria and just dismisses what was done before and now has declared they're not going to do it. So it's not that her budget will go over. Everything could have stayed exactly the same. It's just they have their own criteria. They change it at a whim. But remember, my daughter hasn't changed.
Just follow up on the enhanced rate issue because I think it's pretty clear that it's different now than the enhanced services under the CAF-PA waiver, but now it's carried on as the same service. So I think what she's talking about is these are being requested as ADA accommodations, and there's no appeal rights given. And that's, a violation of law, for starters. And MedLink was addressing it as an ADA accommodation. Cardinal has now changed it to a provider procedure, which is different, I guess, and maybe not improper, but it's not addressing this ADA accommodation issue that people are raising. And I guess that's the question there. Where are those appeal rights? Why are those being systematically denied when they were provided under any other program, even under the innovations waiver with MedLink?
Correct.
Again, I would write down the point that we've heard from people is that there's a feeling that we need a stronger appeal process.
Well, there's no appeal process because there is no
The struggle
provider.
would be,
I have two children that have special needs. One of them is 11 and he has the innovations waiver, and one of them is 9 and he's not. So I have both sides of the story. I have one that got beautiful service, definitely a lot of hiccups as we went from that clinic to Cardinal. So I could not say anything about it that was positive, except for the outcome was favorable in that case. My son had an early birthday, and I just felt like the way that it was handled with me as his parent was really distressful. Now my other son is on the wait list, and again, he's like on a wait list that seems like it's in the space somewhere. There's nobody there, nobody can tell me anything, there's no one to talk to. When you call, you get, supposedly they're going to call you in 48 hours, and, they don't call. I mean, to me, it's really sad. And then this year with the president, the insurance essentially, my other son lost all rehab with our private insurance. And so now he has no therapy whatsoever for both, and he has the same needs that my other child has. So my questions are, what happens to these people that are on the wait list? What if they truly are in need of service that is no longer being provided anywhere? And, we have private insurance, my husband has a job, but we've got two children with huge needs that a lot of them are covered that we're buying. So even though we make money, doesn't mean that we're not poor. So I guess, and then some people tell me that he should qualify for Medicaid, and others, when I call, they're like, no, he doesn't qualify because he makes too much money. And I'm like, yeah, but other people are able to get it. Like, nobody can seem to figure out how that works. And they tell you, well, get this done, get this test done, get this test done, and then try again. Well, the problem is, I've been trying. This is very sad to me that this one child is getting so much, the other child gets absolutely nothing. So, the other thing that concerns me is, obviously I have two children. When my husband covers them under insurance, one's covered, the other one's covered. Well, we get penalized for having insurance, essentially. And so they try to force us to pay for things, and I'm like, well, actually, we have Medicaid, a secondary. I can't, and they're like, well, you should take him off of it. I can't take him off of it. I understand it. It's impossible. But then you spend, I can't even tell you how much time on the phone arguing with people over bills that they're saying they have to pay. I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like, what? And there's no one that really can help with it. It seems like when I bring this up, and there's not much And definitely dental issues, because the child that has it needs a lot of specialized dental care. And I have to find a dentist that will take my dental insurance and the Medicaid. And that is very challenging. And then also agree to, get to be put under. So agree to all of that. And that becomes, I don't know, it just seems like it's very difficult to try to get the care that you need sometimes, especially in this specialized services.
I appreciate what you said, and I will say that, and I don't think there's any way that we can give you a commitment of how long that waiting list will take to go down. But our commitment is that that's what we want to address. That's part of this one. We recognize that there are people on the waiting list. We need to address that issue. It's part of our desire to create a more sustainable labor that makes sense and use the resources that we have to go forward. You bring out some things that we haven't heard from the list, which is really a whole bit about the future and one way and whatnot, and the insurance connections. I'm not sure that we do anything about it. We're going to make sure we put it on the list and try to figure out if there are things that we think can help, because that is a dilemma.
Well, it would definitely be helpful if there was somebody, somewhere we could call, because part of that problem is you get in that loop, and it's like, there's no one you can call for
So
Medicaid.
one thing we can probably ask is that Suzanne will get Suzanne's the person of our customer service and advocacy at the Division of Mental Health, and get your name, and make sure that I don't know if we can answer your question, but we're at least talking about it, and then figure out if we can help collaborate with Cardinal and others. Mary, you were raising your hand back here. Not.
Hi, I'm Mary Short, and this is my daughter Katie. And I wanted you to answer the question about enhanced personal care and enhanced respite that disappeared when we transferred from the CAP MRDD waiver, CAP IDD waiver, to innovations. There were only, according to Appendix J, the cost comparison appendix of the waiver, there were only 400 and some odd people getting enhanced personal care, and maybe another 400, 500 getting enhanced respite. So the state was very aware of the number of individuals who had those enhanced rates. And the same for home supports. There were 40 of us getting home supports level 5. So those three services combined an intensity of need, the highest intensity of need. So did the state track what happened to those? I don't know. I'm assuming there's some overlap in the enhanced respite and the enhanced personal care. But did you track what happened to those individuals? Did you track what's happened to the 40 of us who were getting home supports level 5? Do you just assume that, the natural supports, those volunteers wandered in off the street? Or do you know for a fact that those 40 individuals are now either in skilled nursing facilities or community ICFMRs or the state ICFMRs? What did you do to track it? That's a tiny number of people to not be getting those enhanced. There's 12,000 on the waiver, for goodness sakes. Did you track it?
One of the things we're not going to do is get involved in a debate about this, but we'll go back and look at that side of it. But I think you said, and you said in several of the forums, one is around home support. We are concerned about that. We'll put it down again, and we'll make sure that we continue to do that. There's an issue that you described around the enhanced rates for breast and personal care that we should look at. So those are going to, they're down, they're already written.
So no, they didn't track it.
Was told by somebody long ago to put a face or a name with a face. So this is my daughter Tiffany, and she's 29 years old. I've been doing this a long time, and I feel really bad when I listen to this young lady talk. Tiffany got lost in the system early on in Mecklenburg County, and it's continuing. Trying to navigate the system now is just, you're either the mental illness or you're the intellectually challenged. You're not both, and you're either served under one or the other, and it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. She's severely mentally ill. She is mild to moderate intellectually challenged. Because she
beneath or adequately to what she needed, she continued to get worse and worse and worse. I guess Mecklenburg County lost her from grade school, her mental, I'm going to just say mental retardation, whatever that big thing is. Help me out, anybody. I'm a little nervous. Thank you.
We're good.
And was turned out in 2004, 2008. Moved from home to home. Was raped 3 different times with convictions of men. Hospitalized for hypothermia. Continued to get worse. Ended up in Broad Hospital for 5 years. That's a long stay, folks. She just came out in February, but as a good mother, I finally learned how to advocate. We worked hard. We had disability rights attorneys. We had NC Star. We even had Vivian Leon from the State Department of Facilities. We had 15 to 25 people in training team. She came out. Finally, Mecklenburg County was forced to listen, and I apologize for anybody in this room. But when she had 2 in 1, she's very severe behavior. Now, I hear you back there. Very violent. Nobody, it's hard. But there were some things that were put into place in the hospital, like using her work program to use it as a behavioral tool. You pull it away when she does, safety issues, and then you give it back, and my God, it works. So we put that in. She came out in the community. I was like, oh, praise God, we're doing it. Then I hear, IPRS funding's going. I'm like, what do you mean? What do you mean? What is IPRS funding? So the beginning of June, I started calling Cardinal, trying to navigate the system was beyond incredulous. It's an overtime job.
Mm-hmm.
Overtime job. I ended up filing grievances and, whatever. They got a level 5, she's a level 4, whatever that SIS thing is. Yeah. June 30th, everything was pulled. All this hard work that was a model to the not revolving door back into the hospital, being able to live well and doing well and succeeding, a model was pulled out. There's my families, there's people that are pedophiles, there's people out of jail who are sitting in a residential house with no one-on-one, no structured program, nothing. She can't live at home because I gotta work, and
So,
Yeah.
I think probably would be probably good for us to talk. Because I think that would make a lot of sense. I'm not sure.
He doesn't have this kind of
I
time.
don't want to.
I'm not alone. I mean, this
I understand. I
you
think,
know,
I think it would be good for us to talk afterwards. But I want to make sure that we have an opportunity to get through everything.
Yes.
I promise you.
Cool, thank you.
let me take one step back. There's sort of several things that we've heard, or that we've got to be much better at communication. We heard it last night, and I want to be real clear. It's not just the LMCO. We know it's a state. We need to be better at that. People describe how they try to use our website, which apparently is almost impossible to do. So we recognize that our communications have to improve, and I think that we're doing it. We have to make sure that happens for our LMCO. It's part of the way.
Well, thank you, Jay, for being here. You're a family person, you work hard for your family, and you know that when it comes to human services, predicting and all of that, handling their funds are just an impossible system. I'll recognize that. I'm a family member, here representing myself. I want to go to your vision and the things that you pointed out, and just give some tidbits of what's going on in your vision. So, the way you're doing it. So, we talk about accountability. So first, under accountability, what we see happening in hospitals today is that they are using service definitions, policy manuals, benchmarks, everything except what's in the contract to make you a determination. There's a requirement to defer to clinicians and medical necessity. But instead of doing that, as Medicaid requires, deferring to clinicians and medical necessity, we see the use of those items that are anticipated, that are not part of the waiver, that are used to determine what's going to be funded. So benchmarks is service definitions. Those are not the waiver. Those are interpretations and should not be used. It's illegal for those to be used in determining the service and budgets. The second thing that we have to realize is we don't see NCOs talking about those these services. These are observations and they do not. We don't hear about, there's no communication about the free services. Families don't know about that, so unless NCOs are educating families, that's a whole other source of funding for services that never get talked about. The families never get to access those. The reconsideration reviews, the first woman who talked about that, talked about those various nuances. And the fact is, it's not an equitable system. The reconsideration review people are internal people. They're not objective. It's not outside. It's a very subjective, conflict of interest team of people who relook at the determination already made by PMCO. It's not an objective, independent review. So even before you get to the issue of insufficient millions and appeal rights, it's the people who are making the reconsideration review decision that's not fair. No one ever talks about that. That really needs to be looked at. The SIS. The SIS system, I just went through that. I asked for a copy of the tool that we used and insisted on writing on it. It was an issue that I didn't have a copy of it, and I wrote the determinations made by the team as we went through the SIS process. Families are not being given an actual SIS tool. They're not being allowed to even write on it, and it was a very lengthy, very detailed process. I'm not sure how that's equitable or how that's fair. And yet that's the usual course of business. When NCO staff come in to do that evaluation, they're not even giving families the information for them to write responses and for accountability. Fading plans. The legal fading plans, that's a predetermination of a family's need or an individual's need. So you say up front, this is a fading plan. Medical necessity and deference to the predetermination is the rule. And so I'm real offended when I see that. Yeah, I know that funds are limited, but to go in and tell families this is a fading plan, expect them to pick it off. I mean, that should be what it's based on, and in fact, the law doesn't allow that. The final thing is, and this is just a little piece that's really very challenging here in that county. The transition happened in April. We still can't get the number of beds for PRCs. We can't get the number of beds for group homes. We can't get a basic number. And also, the providers who are listed on the website, many of them are not even providers.
So communication again, but around real basics, like who are the providers? Finally, the DD community, and one of the requirements of the waiver is that providers be groomed and available to respond to the needs in various categories. Dual diagnosis and DD consumers have very little support and services. We all know that. Compared to mental health, you don't need to press in a barrel. But in this county, advocating for far more than just my kids, there's very few options and very few providers who are delivering DD services. And that has to do back with another point you made earlier, the reimbursement rates. Reimbursement rates for services provided to DD are just, there's not enough to keep people doing this.
Really helpful, that was clear, and thank you very much. There's a whole bunch of issues there and that long.
I'm sorry, what is your name? Where you're from?
Fortunately, now you're going to be known throughout Denver.
Some of you all need to apply to Partners in Policy Making, funded by the DD Council, and I work on my day job at the Council for Children's Rights, and we're hoping to learn this stuff well enough to do Medicaid appeals. So, Council for Children's Rights.
Do you have a card? Partners for what?
Okay, so here's what I'm going to do, is that make sure that before everybody leaves, you'll stand up and maybe no line. Yes, ma'am.
I had a question about the split evaluation also. And we just went through the whole process this summer. And one thing I was trying to figure out when we got the evaluation back is how do they measure that criteria? Against who? Against what? Because what we discussed in the meeting didn't seem very accurate based on the evaluation. Like they put down that my daughter's needs are, very high at school in every area, but not at home. Which isn't very accurate, it's not what we discussed. And I work at a school, so I know what our needs are at school also. But then trying to get back to how they're going to use that information, what they're going to use it for, and how they determine those levels, there's nothing there. There's no way to find that out. And we have a community care guide, she was very helpful in explaining that it isn't really there's no way to measure that. How are they measuring that information? And they're saying what do those numbers mean? You're an 8 for medical needs, but a 3 for behavior. What do those numbers mean? And they're telling us they're going to use that to determine her hours for the next plan year. I don't understand how that works and what it means when there's no definitions on how they're using that information.
So I think what we heard pretty clearly is that we got to communicate differently in that, make sure that we have that information available to families with Phil needs, better explanation about how we're using it and what everything else is. Right? And I don't think I can answer your question tonight, but I think the point is that we have to do a better job of making sure that we get that out there.
Well, and we can, just to cameo on that, I think they are going to share our phone numbers at the end. It's a big explanation for the next. We'd be happy to hear from you and try to talk that through with you. And if it can be not reflective of what your child is, then you can ask for a second one.
Okay, that's the thing. I don't even know what I'm asking for.
Right, so I think, if you want to talk to us about that.
We're really, a lot of us are in the same boat because they're giving you information that's meaningless, so that's going to determine your level of need and your level of care.
Part of the problem is the people who are delivering it are not trained. They did integrator reliability training, but they are lay people doing psychology. It's the unauthorized practice of psychology.
We don't want to get in. This has become very
I'm Kathy Dozier. I am a mom. I'm a relative care provider. I'm a guardian. I'm an advocate, and I'm a taxpayer, dadgummit. It's wonderful that you're here in the great state of Mecklenburg. We're glad to see you here. I'm glad you're out and about. You've only been on the job for 6 months, and I think, Huh? You've been in it for a long time. I'm talking about your current position and the heat that you're catching. Okay? And so, I just want to say that I'd like to talk a little bit about reforms that we keep hearing about in Raleigh. And you've got a lot of Raleigh folks here. And I want to say, is the legislation really talking about doing away with the MCOs and opening us up for private insurance and health companies for profit? Because as a taxpayer, I have concerns that North Carolina just paid $48 million to get where we are. And now they're going to throw MCOs under the bus? What's that? You want to talk about the new waiver, and is the waiver even going to exist after that? So, I have some real concerns about the system that we have. We all have concerns about the system that we have now. We have come through so many system changes that nobody can make heads or tails. I mean, and a lot of the MCO folks can't make heads or tails out of what's going on. That's one. The spirit of the federal law that the Innovations Waiver was born of is the Take Back a Bill. I don't think that the spirit of that law is, I think it's getting lost. And I need to know what percentage of that federal dollar is actually getting to our sons and daughters. There are so many hands in the pot already. We talk about care providers only getting $7.25 an hour. I'm sorry, but my local teenager, my national support, is $12 an hour. And she's not trained. I've got care providers that have worked for me for 6 years and never seen a raise. They have seen rates come down, but they've never seen a raise. And we talk about staff turnover. Well, Lord have mercy, who's going to stay on a job that is as cumbersome as our jobs are? They're 24/7 as a relative, as a care provider. We no longer get our daily rate. It's however many hours you're going to pay me, okay? But that doesn't mean I don't have to be home 24/7, or someone doesn't have to be there. Our kids on the waiver are very needy. They wouldn't, even through previous administrations, it was done on an as-needed basis. Now it's first come, first serve, and, so say you, as the waiting list is that way. But I mean, we're talking about a bunch of people. My son is an adult now. And I've got a case coordinator coming from my MCO, and by golly, she's got a cell phone, she's got a laptop, and she's got a county card to drive. And I can't get an iPad for my son who's losing a skill every day. Okay? And so that percentage of that federal dollar, it gets less and less. And every time the legislators decide, now they're going to open this up for privatization, for profit. They're going to make more profit off of our kids and our loved ones. And I tell you what, relatives as providers is the government's best bang for the buck. And disability is a cause and a consequence of poverty. I have lost a career because I can't get decent help. I can't get a care provider to show up every day and meet the daggone bus. And my boss gets tired of me saying, gotta go. Yeah. Okay? And so, it's kind of hard to take all the changes and understanding the profitability of our kids. When they're not the recipient, they're not receiving those dollars.
So one going to start backwards on the,
Okay.
on the amount of money that gets through the state to provide services. We can provide it, and that's something we'll make sure we get out of people. Admin cost. One of the things we can't do, just want to be clear about this, we can't do is determine how much goes from a provider agency directly to the direct support worker. And I will.
That's not true.
Is that one of the things we can do and we want to do is we want to make the administrative burden less for providers, because one of the reasons why you see providers paying less money is because they have high administrative burden. The more, and so this is a confession of a 14-month is that often the things that your LME-MCO does in terms of the requirements they place on you is not them, it's us. And we can change some of those. Can't change them all. With federal money comes a lot of federal strings. But there are things we can do to ease that. But we can tell you absolutely what's the administrative cost at the LME-MCO level on this waiver, and we'll make sure we do that. In terms of the privatization question, the governor has a plan. And the plan is that that's not what the plan is that the LME-MCO system will exist going forward, that we want to consolidate further. I don't think you have to worry about this in this area because Cardinal's already done that consolidation with We believe that we have to do that to make it sustainable long term. But our commitment is that, and frankly, the first decision Secretary Bosch made about this system was that we would keep the LME-MCO system intact. That's what our plan says. There is a difference of opinion in the General Assembly. And so I think you know at the end of the day, there was not a decision made about the future Medicaid reform. In fact, this morning, there was another subcommittee on Medicaid reform in which they began conversations about that. And I think, I suspect that in the newspaper tomorrow, you'll see the Secretary defended the plan that we put forward, defended leaving Medicaid inside of DHHS because we don't want to disrupt the system any further by moving to a different place. That's our commitment. But there are people that have a difference of opinion, and I would encourage you, if you think that this system and building upon it, understanding we've got a lot of work to do, is a better system than changing it completely to a full-fledged commercial system.
No.
It's probably important to take the legislature.
No.
So we will work on administrative, and we hear you clearly about the issue around.
This isn't long-term services and supports.
Support workers.
The MCOs don't do it.
Again, is that when this issue first became an issue when I was at the yard, when people started talking a lot about it, I will tell you that I was dead on the side and talked to our board of directors that
We shouldn't be
I didn't
treated
think it was the
differently
best
than
idea
those other people.
Unless it was extraordinary circumstances that has families and relatives provided services.
This
I
is
changed my
wrong.
opinion, primarily because knowing that for some people it is very difficult to get the kind of quality staff that people need in their homes. And until we can assure you that that is something that's available, we need to make sure that this is still a viable option. We will. Oh, I think I'm thinking Mary's got the camera. But I will say that does not mean that we won't have disagreements about the number of hours, about how that looks, and how we manage it. But that's part of the reason why we have this conversation. We want to hear what people have to say. It is not DHHS's position that we do not want to see relative providers continue to happen. That is not. But we do have to manage our system. So we will have these continued conversations.
What is the opportunity that the building is providing? Is there more of a chance for abuse? I don't mean like physical, I'm trying to abuse of the system. Where does it come from? If there's not accountability on any level, I mean, there's a lot missing. There's a lot of accountability.
I'm going to ask the others to allow me just one more minute to talk about that and just tell you what people say and understand the things that we have to do. Is that is that if you have someone who is an adult with intellectual development and we are, and all of you here say the same thing.
Katie.
I think is that we want to make sure that people have every option that they can. to express their desires and wants.
No.
And who they want to provide those services. That's part of self-direction. In doing that, there is a concern, and I think a legitimate concern that has to be addressed, is that if the family member is providing that service, how does that individual express their wants if the family member has a great deal of influence over them? Now, that's a fair question to answer. And I think that's what we want to make sure that we're protecting, because in the Medicaid program, it's the individual who receives the service that we have to be accountable to. We support, we want families to be a part of that. We absolutely support families engaged in their lives and engaged in their. But our commitment and our responsibility is to that individual who is eligible for Medicaid services. So that's the issue that people talk about. That's why there was a legislative committee that talked about this during this short session. And I think you would have heard DHHS testimony on that. Our position was that we did not want to see them to restrict further the rights of family members and relatives to provide services. I'm sorry, I apologize. Just a minute.
My son is one of those little cops that got lost in the ship. He's at home now, we're trying to get his budget finished or his new plan finished. The kindergarten has just been one disaster after another. I'm about 7 days away from trying to figure out if he's going to end up in an institution or not. We still haven't gotten the final as to what he is going to be able to receive going forward. Now, my first suggestion is that we do something with the service definitions that really apply to the special needs population. We've been thrown into in-home skill building and personal care. There's nothing in between. They say we can't use the other definition of in-home intensive supports because it has to have the illegal fading plan. So what do we do? Now, I asked them to look into the institution. They tell me it's going to be 2 weeks after the date that he has no services before they can even leave to find out if he can actually go into an institution until we figure it all out as his caregivers. There's something wrong with that. The other thing I wanted to suggest is that there be a special department at the state level when a parent calls for intervention or to say, I need reconsideration, that the state steps in at that point before we get to 7 days away, before we get to no services. Somebody needs to know that we're kicking and screaming, saying we love our children, we want them at home, even though they're harm us. But please just stop giving them to different NCOs, and those NCOs, they're on the wall down. I've talked to UN, I've talked to 30 or 40 people at Carver in the last week. If I call, anybody knows who I am. They say, oh, I see you call several times. Yes, I call case managers, I call department managers, I call UN, I call everybody. And still, we have no real resolution. We have some of the services given back. Because after they finally got 2 denials, we got 2 denials early this month, the services were supposed to cut off October 1st. When it went for the reconsideration, I got the 72 hours, they turned it around. Somebody, Dr. McCoy, the assistant medical director, overturned the decision that Carmen had made to not give him any in-home skill building. That was one red flag, because if he did it, why didn't those people that were supposed to be qualified to make that decision, why didn't they see that he needed those services? But I don't think they're qualified, because we had a social worker and a doctor of pharmacy, PhD, that went over his case both times. Now, they say in the book that when you send in a second submittal, a different set of eyes will look at it. That didn't happen. The very same people that looked at it the first time looked at it the second time. And it only got fresh eyes when it went to the reconsideration. And everything is just a sticker. They read the script. You can almost say it with them when they start to read it over and over again. In the book, I read it, I heard it 50 times, I'm working for my son.
recourse do you have?
So I know Kathy's written down, you said there, and probably I'm sure you're talking to people after that.
Not just you and staff, but staff at Cartmel report yes to you and need to be qualified to make these decisions. Because those are the people that are stopping. And a lot of parents won't fight. They'll just say, oh, well, okay, if that's all I can get. But that's not fair to the consumers, to our children that need the services. And they say they're qualified, but they're not. You look at their credentials, they're not qualified.
Yes, I'm an AFL provider, and I'm with the since 1999, and I'm about 2 for business name. And I was wondering why I can't do my Facebook program.
We have heard that in every study we've been in. I think some questions we need to look at that, and I think we have to commit to trying to figure out a way that we can make that happen. Somewhat, I'm not sure what that looks like.
She asked why AFLs can't get respite. They took it away from them under this waiver.
Well, several questions, but I want to go back to the heart of what seems to be everybody's concern that has their loved ones, whether it be their sons, daughters, mothers, that whoever has a disability and the DMAs are supposedly administering effective medical assistance. It always seems to be a core question as to why are services being cut to them as opposed to the group homes and the other facilities that's operating off of the state funding. And it's a common theme because you don't have this many people having concerns and grievances about being cut services, ineffective services, just by accident. And that's what was addressed with the suit that came down, the complaint that the DOJ out of DC joined with the North Carolina DOJ and suing the state or had an injunction. Now the injunction has disappeared and the state basically caught the plea and decided to settle in their which is down there in the Eastern District now, and signed off, I believe it was shortly after the complaint by the DOJ. And the basic problem is that it's a clear vision that the state has every intention, including since you're under the auspices of the DHHS, of funneling, is a clear path of funneling everybody into the group homes, funneling into the institutions. And there's no way that all the services could be being cut without this being the agenda. Not this many people would have a problem with service cuts if the state didn't have an agenda to keep the disabled, the recipients of these healthcare services to be placed into the institutions, whether it's a 6-bed facility, 20-bed, or the size of the bed house that's proposed in the There's no way that there's an act that happened. There has to be a director from the top down that's making the of families not having enough service and having their services cut. Why is it that the DMA and whoever's looking out for self-determination and making sure people that you're serving are getting their rights and they're advocating the rights of being served? Why is it that there is not some kind of audit being done to make sure that the people that are receiving the services are actually in the most integrated setting as opposed to being in an institution? What's being done to audit who's in there?
Just go into that. I think your point is you want to make sure that we have available resources for people that want to live in their communities and their settings.
Their participation,
So
where you're trying.
a couple of things. And so, one is that I can tell you absolutely there is no directive from anybody in government that says we want to follow people to facilities. Absolutely not. In fact, there's a directive that we're trying to make sure that people have options to live outside of facilities. One of the reasons why we're
Not
here
us.
today people are saying and what we can do better to help support them. Now, there is also a choice factor, because there are people who would prefer to have their sons and daughters live in residential settings. And we're not going to deny that option to those individuals either. We talk about choice goes both ways, and we want to make sure that's possible. There is absolutely no bias toward a residential setting versus a community setting, living at home with families. And I can tell you, there are a lot of residential providers, I suspect one or two here, that will tell you that they don't feel that they've been treated correctly. So understand. Yeah.
Well, as a stat, in other words, there's statistics out there. That's why we got sued by the DOJ.
Now, the DOJ settlement was a very different settlement. It was about one specific type of residential setting, the adult care home. And it was all about people with mental illness who lived in those homes and did not get services there. And we did settle that, and we are, Jessica, who I think is talking to somebody right now, is in charge of implementing that settlement. And that is consistent with the values that we have for how we want to see this as work. Now, I will tell you, there are people that are very worried about that on the other side of that argument for you. So understand that they're not providers, family members and others, who would take great exception. People like Bell House in particular would say the same thing. Understand
Well, that's
that.
not the population. I'm just talking about the population that don't need to be in there. And they have families, several families are out here saying, we want our loved ones home.
And we clearly want to make sure that that is an option available.
Yes.
I know we've alluded to this a little bit, but I want to make sure that it gets written down. Is that with the loss of case management, it's been very difficult for a lot of the families we serve. And to have the opportunity to have an advocate write your plan and develop your plan outside of somebody that just does it as an administrative function has been lost. And really having an opportunity, somebody to help navigate through the system. A part of that has been taken off the community guide, but it's complicated. It's different. It isn't the same. I think the service has been fractured. There's confusion. Who does what? Care coordination is many times we've met trying to figure out who does what. It's a loss. And you need to figure out how to get something similar to that.
What we've heard is each one of the sessions that we've gone to, we want to make sure we sit back and that CMS will not allow us to pay for advocacy in that role. What we think we hear is that there are functions that make sense as you describe it.
That's not true.
In other ways that we ought to think about.
Read the definition of community guide. It's in the community guide definition.
It is a federal requirement. It's not something we can do. It's not considered something that is medically necessary.
I don't believe it's a federal requirement.
I think that we take granted that that's
Bottom line is, if you're paying for a care for 1 year.
Excuse me, the point wasn't that what you're trying to say is that it's not a requirement to keep the case management. That is true, that is not a requirement. But you can't pay for advocacy.
No, I want someone that will actually get something medically necessary.
If it's not an answer, a lot of people really want to say something.
My name is Marla, and I am a provider as well as a parent of 3 kids, one in SA, one in MH, and one in DD. And are you going to be doing one of these sessions for SA and DD at some point?
I'm not sure.
Well, I guess for anyone that has been in all 3 of the systems, the DD far surpasses the other 2.
Not true.
In my opinion. But from the provider standpoint, there's been recently, from the feds, a mandate to states to provide a behavioral analysis to individuals with autism. And my question to you is kind of comes in 4 pieces. What is in the works for implementation of that in North Carolina? Will the stakeholders be invited to a roundtable meeting prior to policy being written to talk about it openly? Is there a target date? And my biggest concern, as both a parent and provider, is that the youngsters' outcomes, the young ones, are much greater when they have access to these services following discharge from CDC. And quite often, they go straight from CDC into the Registry of Unmet Needs, and they wait, and they wait, and they wait, and they wait. And so, is there going to be some provision for those kids leaving CDC to have immediate access to that?
Mm-mm.
I don't think I can answer. I don't think I can answer anything. What I can tell you is that we are well aware of the direction from CMS around those services. We are internally having those conversations within DMA and DMH and the department. Give you a timeline of what it's going to look like. I probably can't do that tonight.
But everything that you're asking for, the stakeholder input, we're in the very, very early stages of looking at that. All those things will happen as the process kind of unfolds. I think we've had like one meeting, oh, we've got to do something. So we're not quite where you're at yet. But
We will have, what I will say to you is that we can be involved in with phone numbers and emails. We'll make sure that we're.
And then I have one last comment that I'd like to make is that when our MCO makes rate changes and changes to our service as it's provided, it would also be appreciated that the stakeholders be a part of that discussion prior to it just coming down. Because the impact it has on us is far greater than, I actually don't even know that it's considered.
I'm going to try to get the people that haven't said anything yet. So.
Thank you so much for your tonight. My name is Pat Marabelli, and I'm a 6-year-old autistic son. He actually lives in a Unimar group home, and it's a success story. He's doing wonderful. He's thriving. He's happy.
Because his services aren't cut.
Probably the only fear that I have is his funding. This is 2 years in a row that I've had to go through the appeal process because he has lost funding for his personal care services.
No,
And
he's
I've
not on the
had
waiver.
suggestions, to deal with that process because it's very stressful for the parents. First, last year when the process came up for him to go through the evaluation, as his legal guardian, I was never notified. They called my son directly, made the appointment, showed up at the group home. He was denied services, and it took me months to dispute. I was faithful to be one. And then this year,
Non-innovation waiver
they
services.
scheduled to go out and meet with him, and as his guardian, I was not informed. They met with him individually in his room, and got information from him and did not do yet. I'm going through the appeal process, and I feel confident that we'll win, but I think some of the changes would be that guardians are notified of the evaluations prior to, because I think it would save taxpayer money, time, stress, and energy for the parents and also for everybody that's involved. Second, the individual should not be assessed alone. And third, keep in mind that cutting funding for individuals like my son, who is thriving and doing wonderful, could cause him to regress, and then I could be back to square one.
Thank you very much, Mr. White. Yes. Go back to the other.
This isn't Steve who's some of the questions.
Well, thank you, because it's really hard.
However, we've been in the system over 15 years, and I've been able to correspond with our case manager. Last year with McLean, had no problem corresponding with the care coordinator. We have the same care coordinator this year under Cardinal. She's not allowed to email me, I cannot text her, and she doesn't return my calls around her plan time. Now, throughout the year, I need nothing. She comes out monthly to see us. I had to make it very, very clear I was not signing her yearly plan without a hard copy. She had to make some kind of exception to bring me a hard copy. I'm supposed to sign a blank thing, and she's going to push send from her computer to send the plan on. You don't sign a blank piece of paper, you get a hard copy.
So she wanted a hard copy of the plan and she wasn't able to get it.
But she did bring it to me yesterday, but she also said at the time, this is it, I'm not changing anything, and that's it. And I've never seen one of her business cards yet, and she said we're not allowed to communicate by email or text.
So essentially what you're saying is that from a care coordination standpoint,
There's no text.
there's not as the kind of communications that you need. Yes, ma'am. I won't count your first one.
Thank you. I just want to say a few thank you for making that comment and Will right here. I have a 14-year-old who has cerebral palsy. I understand about the advocacy piece, but I think the lack, and I'm also a provider of the services, so I feel like I have it juggling on both sides, and sometimes it becomes very difficult for me when I'm looking at things. But I just really want to make a point that when the new system, or when y'all looking at things, we really have to look at that care coordinator, community guide, case management piece, because it is really not working. And it's also, just that she just said, it was her case manager, her care coordinator under that lady, it went to Cardinal, and that relationship has changed. And I understand that the advocacy piece is not there, but when I have someone who has to come in my house, so now I have, a care coordinator, a community guide, and the relationship is not there for me to trust the care coordinator because there's no relationship there. And I understand you take the advocacy away, but why does the relationship have to go with it? I just think that is something that has to be captured somewhere in this system so that families are not as stressed out and not as torn. 5 years ago, being a provider and having services in the system, I didn't feel as stressed out as I do right now because I don't know what to do, even as a provider. So, I just want to make sure.
Way to the back.
Hello, everyone. My name is Myra. I'm a parent. I'm also my son's worker. And I'm also his Medicaid representative. And I've heard a lot of similarities here. And I came out tonight because I really wanted to hear some of the other parents, and mine the only one that's feeling the way I'm feeling. I'm tired, I'm overwhelmed, and as far as the care coordinator, and the different parties and stuff, I'm beginning to feel like it's a dictatorship. I feel like, I'm not respected.
Yes.
I'm not educated. I can't understand what they're saying to me, talk down to me. And I'm just tired. And at night I come here because the next step is the Department of Justice. Because I feel like the 504 Rehabilitation Act is being violated. My son doesn't even have a voice. What's the purpose of having an individual playing every year if his voice is not going to be heard?
Yeah.
And then the providers, they have a more say-so than we do. In other words, it's like they're coming to his home and tell him what they're going to do. And look at me, it's like I'm a threat trying to make me look like I'm the villain. No, I'm not the villain. I'm his protector. I'm his advocate. I love my son. I worked in the medical field for a long time. I was a CNA 1, CNA 2, twice a nursing student. I've lost several jobs to come home to take care of my son. And they don't understand the compassion that I have, not only just for my son, but the people in the medical community. I work in people's homes. I want them to come in my home, my son's home, and treat my son the way they want somebody to treat their family. You know, and I'm sorry I didn't mean to get up here and preach, but I mean, I sat back there for a while, I heard some people, and it brought tears to my eyes because I feel their pain. And something needs to be done. And one of the things that I've heard about, like the community guide, I've already was doing that with my son. And there's a lot of the things they got in place. You can eliminate some of that, save some money. You know, if you want to save money. And what I've seen over the years, I'm just saying in the past, I say 3. You know, my son has to wait for adaptive equipment. He's getting depressed. He can't sleep. He can't eat. And it's affecting me too. Why should we have to fight for that? When it's already been authorized, we was going to go to Raleigh to go to a hearing that they promised us, you know, that they was going to let it go and he would get his adaptive equipment. Then they lied. They lied to me. They're sending me an email in a very sarcastic way. It's saying, yeah, well, you're not going to get it. You know, I get angry. And I don't want to come across like I'm not violent. I'm just angry. And I want to be heard. And I hope that you hear the voices here. You know, let me say one thing, I'm going to shut up, y'all. Because I don't get on no bandwagon. I'm old, I'm sorry. I'm going to make sure I get out of points. Because if you're dealing with somebody's lives, my son is getting sicker. He's not getting no better. I'm getting older, he's getting older. And he should have a right to live in his community. I would never put my son in I would never. And for the ones that have to do it, I understand. But don't force me to do that. Don't force me to do that. My son should be happy. And for his mom, he said, Mom, I love you. I know he do, and I love him. And I want to be heard. He wants to be heard. And he would have been here tonight because of his adaptive equipment, rain and danger. What am I supposed to do? Put his life in danger? No, I'm not going to do it. And I'm going to fight. I'm going to fight, and I'm going to be heard. Thank you, sir.
We're going to start back to people over the second round, but I wanted to, because I know some people are going to want to leave right now. We'll say 2:30 and instead of 1 o'clock afterwards. But a couple things I just want to say in terms of comments. First of all, a lot of emotion, and that's absolutely what you expect, and people should feel good to do it. And so we appreciate you being willing to share everything that you've done with us. We are recording it. We are going to make sure that you will see these things and themes that get put out and see those in other places. Kathy, just put emails and phone numbers here. I'll leave some cards here so you can keep in contact with us. The other thing I want to say, this is also really important. Our responsibility is to try to conserve and support as many people as possible. And to do that, we have to create an equity system. And many things that you guys have talked about tonight are process things that we can absolutely deal with, or budget things that we hope we can deal with. We believe, and I want to be real clear why we believe this, we believe by creating a system that has individual budgets that you can count on, that you know that will be again, we may disagree on what that budget is, and we'll have to go to process to get there from here. It's something that you can count on. Will allow us to be more flexible with the service definitions. I've heard that today. Service definitions are sort of out there, more flexible with those service definitions, and to create plans that are much more person-centered. That really do that. So that's one of the reasons why we wanted to put that as part of our vision, because we know that we have to create a sustainable system, and it's not going to be sustainable if we can't be predictable going forward. So that's one of those key components, and we'll continue to hear that, of what we're proposing going forward.
I'd like to know that at some point, these coordinators be taken out of Cardinal and be somewhere else, because everybody has the same thing. You can no longer talk about case coordinators doing it. So can that be a part of what you look at when you look at it in the future?
I think what we have heard tonight, we've heard in the places that we have to, so we phrase it this way, make sure that, one is that to do away with it as a requirement. We have care coordination inside of the managed care system. So there is none, and always will have to be one. We have heard from people across the board that there is a need for something else that supports families functions that we can look at. So we're really clear. Now, I want to be real clear. We don't know what the outcome of these conversations will be. And we can't commit one way or the other on that. What we will do is take this back, have these conversations, we'll look at other options, we'll hear from us if we can hear you, and we will take everything that people have said on this situation.
We were great relationship with our coordinators, and we want you to that also. It could be in the way they're trained, because it does, I mean, our coordinator also said about the texting and that she's not supposed to, I'm sure it's a legal thing that she can save all those messages or whatever you need to get to for a while, whatever. But I guess I would, before you make huge changes, it might be some tweaks that need to be done in their training that they're not kind of afraid of building a relationship or whatever it is.
Thank you for saying that. Just being in here is that the idea is that maybe there are some less significant changes that we can make, less big changes that can be made that could actually meet the needs of what people say. And I think that's sort of what we're trying to say, is that there are probably options that we can do that can address the concerns that people have and improve the system. And yeah, let me say one more thing to make sure is that, as I said earlier on, is that I've been around for a long time, and everybody I meet in the LMCOs, everybody I meet in the provider agencies, I heard something meet somebody in this field that's doing this work that isn't compassionate, that wants to do the right thing, that is trying their best to get it done. Sometimes the systems that we design create barriers for people to do that. So we own that as part of the system and how we design it. That's what we're going to do. So I want to include that really people that work very hard every day to try to get this right. Sometimes it may not come across as that feeling. The age out of recommendations.
No, but what we have been hearing, and I think this is going to be a very important component of what we're right next, is that we need to pay more attention in our services to the spectrum of life. So you can't age out, but we have not done perhaps the best job of considering what's going to happen as they age, and that's something we're definitely going to be looking at.
We're writing it down. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, what's the administration's views for the future of state-funded services for group homes?
We have a legislative mandate to report to the General Assembly in April, fortunately it's April, that about how for both mental health and development disability services, how do we address the long-term needs of residential settings? Came out of the personal care question and how that works. I think our position is that what we need to do is find a stable source of funding. And really, somebody's eligible for Medicaid or city Medicaid service, can we use that funding? If they're not, how do we marry the state funding to make that work? How do we create something that's efficient? Because this whole personal care thing, special assistance, and other state funding services, maybe Medicaid, it's a complicated way to fund something essentially as a residential service. So our goal is to try to fund something that's less complicated, it's more stable, and blend some of those things. As I'm learning, and I think as the folks that work in the medical systems every day will tell you, and everything else, that none of this is it's a very complicated system that we've all sort of developed over the years, that we're trying to break down some of the barriers. But our goal is to break something that is sustainable for group homes. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for coming out tonight. I too am a parent of a child that had a disability. However, she's 32 years old now. They said she wouldn't graduate, have a degree or anything. She has a master's degree in helping out children now. One of the things that, at least I want for you, because I was used once before, and I don't want, and I know your pain, and I feel it because I've been there. Don't even want to go there and talk about it. However, one of the things that I want you to do is to learn from what I did, is that instead of facing and looking at the negative, I had to look at the positive. I had to look at things and be a solution-oriented. Instead of coming up, you're not doing this isn't working, or whatnot. Because you have like politicians, they don't may not know because they don't have that child. They are not in that household. They do not know what we go through or have had to go through. And so the only person that's going to know what it's going to take to be able to get out of that is us. And so do what I did. I ended up going around starting support groups. That you're here, going to the different regions to where y'all come together and form support groups to where maybe something worked for you. And maybe you have an idea that can help sister over here. Maybe you have an idea that can help this person over here. But come together in order to come up with solutions that will help. Come up with a list. Take that list and then give it to your legislators. Give it to Dave, give it to whomever, to where y'all came up with some solutions. Maybe you looked at the budgets. Maybe you came up with some ideas that can help. However, this is good because y'all are able to hear the concerns, but we have to be more proactive as far as what you can do, as far as coming together to give some resolutions.
Thank you. Okay, so here's what I'm assuming, that we're probably at the end. There might be a few people that want to talk individually afterwards. We're happy to do that as we go forward, but we also don't want to keep you beyond the time that you want to meet. So let me close by a couple things, and Kathy, if you want to say anything else in here. One, we can't thank you enough for showing up. We know it's not easy to do, it's very difficult to get out on TV and do this, especially if you share somebody with a disability and understand that. So thank you so much for that. This is not the end. And I keep forgetting to do this, but on our website, or the email list, we will be posting sort of themes that are coming out of this meeting that are going to happen. Remember, there is a stakeholder group that meets in Raleigh, actually it's meeting Friday, again on this Friday at the Brown Building on this campus at 1 o'clock. Those comments from that will be posted so they see it. You are welcome to come. They're a public meeting, so I just want to make sure you know that. You're welcome to come. If you want to get more information, email us and we'll get you those details. We will continue to talk to you. We've got another 6 of these scheduled across the state, and we will hear more themes that will get included here. Again, our commitment to you is that we will listen, and we've heard lots of good information tonight. We'll tell you what we can and can't do and what our proposals are. We'll listen again.